So in the last video, we saw how we can add primary keys as constraints. We saw that we can make it at the attribute level, and we can also do it at the table level. So what we're going to do in this video is talk about how we can do the constraint and add the constraint for the foreign key. So remember, we said a foreign key is a column in your table that references the primary key in another table. So what you do is you can also do it at the table level, or you can do it at the attribute level. So here, let's look at the attribute level. You have next to the column name and the data type, you use the word references. So references is the word we use for foreign keys. So we say references, and then you put your table name that your foreign key is coming from, and in parentheses, the primary key in that table. And so that is the first way of doing it. For example, here I have a table called persons, and it has a person ID and some information. And now I have another table called project, and for each project, I want to know who the owner is. And the owner is a person that exists in the persons table. So here I have owner ID, int. I could make it, for example, not null, and then I use the keyword references. So references indicates that this is going to be a foreign key. And then what does it reference? Where is this foreign key coming from? Well, it's coming from the persons table, and in parentheses, I put the column that it is coming from. We could also do it at the table level. We could also make sure that it's named. So if I want to make it sure it's named, like because here it's unnamed. See, we don't have the word constraint, so we don't have a name for this constraint. If I want to give it a name, I just add the word constraint and give it a name. Just like we did with the primary key, we said constraint and the name and then primary key. Here we say constraint, the name of the constraint, and then references and the rest of it. And so here's another example, the same example, but I gave this name, this constraint a name. And usually the names that we use come from the table that we're working on. So this is the projects table. So I put projects here. I am referencing the persons table. So I put the person here, or persons. It should have been persons because this table is called persons. And then I indicate foreign key. So if someone is trying to insert, for example, an owner ID 100, and there is no person in this table with ID 100, and you get this constraint error, you'll know, oh, there's a problem with the foreign key. So when you have this name, then you know that if there is a problem with the foreign key between the projects table and the person table. So having meaningful names like this is helpful for your constraints to find what's wrong when a problem occurs. And then the last way of adding the foreign key is as a table constraint at the table level, where we come to the bottom of the table and we say constraint, we give it a name, and then here we have to say foreign key, the name of the column that is a foreign key in our table, and then references, and then the other table. So it looks very similar to the primary key where it had constraint, the name, and then you say primary key and your column. Now here you have an additional piece of information, which is where is this foreign key coming from. So this isn't how you would add a foreign key, so try it out. And what I want you to do for this classwork is to drop the tables that you've created in the last classwork assignment, because you're going to be creating them again, but by adding more information. So the first thing is you're going to choose appropriate primary keys for the two tables that you created in the first classwork, 3.1. And then you're going to recreate the tables with those primary keys. You're going to use the named column constraints in the customer table. You're going to use the table constraint for the credit card table, and make sure that all your columns have appropriate constraints, unique, not null, default. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to modify the credit card table to include a card holder ID. So we want to know the card holder ID, which is going to refer to the customer ID in the customer table. Once you're done and you got it to work, submit your SQL code and a screenshot of your output from dropping and creating the new tables in SQL Developer.